He's the general manager of KSTP AM here in the Twin Cities. He carries the Larry King Show. Scott.
I had the distinct pleasure of being late for Larry this morning. I have a wife who sleeps next to the alarm clock, which will soon change following what happened this morning. So a half an hour of dodging police and getting him on our air this morning, we were able to get him back here for your group meeting this morning. So we were very fortunate that way. My experience with Larry King started a few years ago when I had the distinct pleasure of, at that time, having just returned back to KSTP Radio, and we started the talk format. And the then general manager was approached by ABC to do some talk radio things, and we fired Larry. And we were picketed by a couple of union mail carriers came out and were very miffed because over their shift we no longer carried Larry King. So we changed that about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and currently now are airing the Larry King Show every night, Monday through Friday, and very successfully, I might add. Larry is making life exciting for the people at CCO, and we like that a lot. Now if we could just get all corporate farmers and almost small-town farmers, we'd have a bigger audience. Let's see. Larry hosts nightly, coast to coast, some 275 radio stations on the Mutual Radio Network. He is recently a Peabody Award winner. Larry's started a fledgling television career. He and Ted Turner were married shortly, not that long ago, and he's now on CNN, which allows us to repeat one of Larry's hours overnight, which we also talked about this morning, but that's television. He writes a weekly column for USA Today and the Sporting News, and he also hosts a once-a-month worldwide show on the Voice of America called Talk to America. We're also going to have Larry King here back the 15th for the All-Star, the night before the All-Star game, so if any of you are in Minneapolis, please give me a call if you'd like to go up and sit and watch Larry do his show. We'll be broadcasting live from the AmFac Hotel. It's very, very limited seating, but I'd be more than happy to have or help any one of you if you wanted to sit in on that. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce certainly one of our finest talk talents and one of the finest talk talents in the country, Mr. Larry King.
On the radio, we hear the magic happen right here on the Larry King Show. It's a winning team. It's a night well spent. It's got every kind of guest from movie star to president. And when Larry's gonna ask, you never know. But you know that it's fun and you know that it's real. That's the magic of the Larry King Show. Larry King magic, here and happen. Larry King magic, here and happen. You just love Larry King. Magic, 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 magic. Magic happen on the radio. You hear the magic happen right here on the Larry King Show. You got open lines. People call from everywhere. Let's talk to Larry and Bill Gates, the Muppet billionaire. And leave Mary make sure that the show gets through. And if you ask me tonight, Larry just might tell the Carvel ice cream story to you. Larry King magic, here it happen. 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 Don't you just love Larry King? Magic, 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 magic. Larry King magic, here it happen. Magic, 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 magic. Something magic happen.
That, by the way, is the Baltimore Oriole theme song called Oriole Magic, and the company that did it did a version for us and got the permission of the Orioles to use it. And I didn't know they were going to play it. So I've been introduced in lots of weird places and have done lots of weird speaking assignments. That's the first time I get introduced, and we all had to sit around and listen to a guy doing Joe Cocker poorly. Yeah, I love speaking at broadcast conferences, and it's really nice to be here. I know we've been trying for a couple of years to put this together, to come out to the Upper Midwest Broadcast Conference. Personally, I wanted to go to the Lower Midwest Broadcast Conference just to see girls in Lower Illinois. But you were persistent, so we're here. I never heard of a section being dried up like Lower Midwest. And I never know what I'm going to talk about, but we will ramble a little and later take some calls. I want to thank Scott for that terrific introduction for general managers. That was a 9. Mostly speaking to general managers, you have to go through interpreters. I'm glad you have me here, because it's nice to have, when you have talent at a broadcast conference like this, because most of you are probably management. And management and talent have a kind of cleavage in broadcasting. And it's very nice to represent talent and maybe to tell you a little bit about what talent thinks of general managers and program directors. I've had to work with them all my life. There are some very good general managers, and there are a lot of general managers who, typical general, I told this on the radio this morning, here's what typical general managers do, and then wonder why they got a bad day from one of their talents. You're a jock, and you're just about to go on the air, and your shift is 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., and you're going on in 30 seconds. There's a knock at the door. The general manager opens the door and says, "See me as soon as you're off." And I have 4 hours of death. And you go into his office with his bimbo secretary who's been sleeping with for 2.5 years. She don't know who you are. You're on the station at 9 and she don't know your name. And you wait another hour, and then you go into the office, and he always says, "What do you want?" And you said, "You told me to come in." "I don't remember." They don't remember what it was. And then 2 days later, someone tells them, "Did you hear that guy the other morning? He was terrible." Then the general manager calls you in. "What was wrong the other morning?" "You called me in." "About what?" "I don't know." And this is a constant purpose. Well, I've had to, we in the talent end have to live with this. I was very fortunate to get into talk very early in a broadcast career. I was 23 when I got a chance to do a show at a restaurant and found my niche. And before that, I was a disc jockey, sportscaster, clean-up the station person at a very small station in Miami Beach. And this is a true story, and I told it to Tom Snyder once on The Tomorrow Show. This is not my first adventure with All Night these past 7.5 years. My first adventure occurred when I just got started in radio. And I was really, man, that was a big deal. I just could not leave the radio station. I was a total workaholic. I'd do anything, sports, news, clean up, do the noon show, do the 6 o'clock show, anything. I get sick, I'll fill in. And general managers and program directors have ways of spotting that kind of person. They love it. They foam at the mouth. These people don't want overtime, and they'll work there all the time. Well, true story. General manager calls me in and says, "The all-night guy isn't coming in tonight. Would you like to do the all-night show?" This was really a one-lung radio station, 250 watts, no engineer. We had to go out and take our own tower readings. And he said, "Would you do the night show?" I said, "Sure." So I'm on from midnight to 5, and I'm there all by myself. First Street, Miami Beach. Never been on the air that late at night. I've only been on radio 2 months. At about 2:30 in the morning, the phone rings, and a record's playing, and this girl says, "Hi." I said, "Hi." She said, "You're really turning me on." Now, you gotta understand this. I'm a Jewish kid from Brooklyn who still thinks the pimples are caused by Hershey's. And no girl has ever called me and said that I turned her on. I was crazy. I said, "Wow, I'll be over as soon as I'm done." We in radio never care. I get done at 6, I'll be over. She says, "My husband comes home at 6. I learned early about Miami." I says, "What do I do?" She says, "Come over now." I said, "I'm on the air." She says, figure out a way. She gives me the address and her name. Hang up. First moral dilemma. Well, I wanted to be in radio all my life. 21 years old, 22. I'm on radio. My dream has come true. And this girl with an insane voice has called me and invited me over. What do I do? Here's what I did. I said, on the air, here's what the people heard. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a real treat for you this morning. You're going to hear the entire Harry Belafonte at Carnegie Hall album. Album ran 33 minutes, which is all the time I needed. We had an automatic switcher, and we had 2 albums. I put side 1, side 2 was going to switch. Put the record on, zoom to her house. Get to the house, about 11 blocks away. I pull in, just like she said. There was the car parked. I pulled in behind the car, little white light. Went into the living room, and there she is sitting. She's wearing a white negligee on the couch with a little lamp. And I ran across the room. My arms out. Her arms went out. I grabbed her. She grabbed me, and I'm holding her. And I kissed her on the cheek, and the radio was right there. And Harry was singing. Down the way, where the nights, where the nights, where the nights. I never saw her again. I shoved her back onto the couch and drove to the radio station. 3 red lights. And I got the radio on because we're masochistic in broadcasting. I'm listening to Where the Nights, Where the Nights. Must have been 700 Where the Nights. Get to the radio station, all the phone lines are going. I corrected, apologized, and very nervous, and I started answering the phones. The last call was a little Jewish man. And I just picked up the phone. I said, WHR, and he was saying, better nights, better nights, better nights. I'm going crazy with better nights. I said, what is it, sir? He said, some guy is singing better nights. I said, well, sir, I pondered, why didn't you change the station? He said, I'm an invalid. And a lady takes care of me during the day, and she sets the radio on that station up on a bureau so I couldn't reach it. So I started to imagine this guy. And I'm lying in bed with, like, it had to be 700 Where the Nights. The only good fortune was the general manager never heard it. I never got called down on that. When you do a lot of speaking, as I do, and I do a lot of speaking to broadcast groups and colleges and alumni associations, etc., I never have a topic. It's very weird when you work that way, but I really like to work off the cuff. Never like to know what I'm going to talk about. But I'm more at home that way, and when you do it that way, you work on a kind of nervous energy tension since you don't know what you're going to talk about. But there's also the joy of the unexpected, and you never know what you're going to get when you deal with speaking. And I know a lot of people here are young, and they're going to rise in the broadcasting field. And when you do rise, you're going to get invited to speak a lot. And you're going to run into what is known as speakers chairman. These are people who book speakers. They're all different. They're all slightly crazy because they got a crazy job to do. They got to book the speaker, make sure the speaker arrives, etc. And you meet a lot of weird ones. And there's a couple true stories that happened to me in speaking. This was like in the mid-'60s. Guy called me up from the Rotary Club. Is anybody here in Rotary? Okay, good. True story. Guy calls me up, and he says, we'd like to have you speak at our annual Rotary meeting at the Miami Shores Country Club. It's about 3 months away. I said, fine. He said, what is your topic? I said, I don't have a topic. He says, you have to have a topic. I said, listen, you called me. I don't have a topic. He says, you must have a topic. If we were inviting Eisenhower, we would demand a topic. I said, call him. I don't have a topic. So we hang up. Next night I'm going on the air. It's like a minute before I'm on the air, and the guy calls. And I pick up the phone, hello, and he says, yeah, this is Joe something. And I hear in the back, he said, I'm at the print shop. We're printing the flyers. What's your topic? So I can't get rid of this clown. So I said, my topic is the future of the American Merchant Marine. True story. He hangs up, I hang up, I go on the air, forget about it. And I kept kept a calendar of speaking engagements. I must have had 10 in between the time I had to go to this one. And all I had written was Miami Shores Country Club, 8 o'clock Wednesday night. I forgot all about speaking to this guy. Totally forgot. All I knew was, I didn't even know it was a Rotary Club. I go to Miami Shores Country Club, no parking space at the park across the street, and I'm really feeling proud of myself that I drew this crowd. I get to the building, and it's a big sign in front. It says, "Tonight, the future of the American merchant marine." And I said, holy Christ, they got 2 speakers. I'm the MC. Oh, I got the wrong night. Now the speakers chairman comes out all excited, and this tells you a lot about Rotary clubs. This topic, the future of the American merchant marine, broke the all-time Rotary Club attendance record. They came on wheelchairs from Fort Lauderdale. They could not wait to hear about the future of the American merchant marine, and neither could I. And I stood up on the dais, old guys, a lot of old guys. I had 6 heart attacks and people leaning forward. This was just old group. And cold roast beef and dry string beans. You got a picture. I thought Barry Goldwater was a pinko. Speakers chairman gets up. The guy who booked me is going to introduce me. And he tells everyone that he took the day off work and researched the history of the American merchant marine. So he proceeds to the 1712 Maritime Union. He gives them all this. He says, now to talk about the future, here's Larry King. And get up. And I forget, if you don't know, leave it alone. I never mentioned the merchant marine once. I spoke for 20 minutes, stone silence. I didn't know what I was talking about. And I left. No applause. They're sitting there, you know. I hear the murmurs. What? I get to my car, and the speakers chairman has followed me in my car. Banging on the window, I had a Mercury with push-button windows. Hit the push button. He's so ticked. He sticks his head in the window. He's got his head right against mine, screaming, and I got my hand on the button. It's hard to know power, but that's power. So finally he spots that, he backs out the window, and he screams, "You never mentioned the future American merchant marine. We sent out flyers. We got the largest membership turnout in our history, and you never mentioned the future of the American merchant marine." And I said, "They have no future," and drove away. One way not to get invited back. I also got booked to speak once by the Mafia. It's a true story. In Miami, we had a lot of Mafia people. They liked living there. It was sunny, and they had homes. I was at the radio station one day, and the producer of the show comes in and says, "There's a boom boom giorno on the phone for you." I said, "Hello?" He says, "King?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "Boom boom giorno, November 8th, War Memorial Auditorium, Boys Town of Italy. It's a benefit. Sergio Franchi is the singer. You're the MC. Black tie, hangs up." I went. Something told me it would be in my best interest to go to this. I go, and there's War Memorial Auditorium, Fort Lauderdale, Sergio Franchi to sing, Larry King MC. I go back, Boom Boom meets me in my car. Says, "We're very glad you came." I said, "So am I." He says, "No rules, you can kid all you like, but don't turn up the house lights. Don't ask them to turn up the house lights." I says, "What?" He says, "Well, we got a lot of jukebox dealers here and people in the Italian gravy business. They don't want to know each other, right? Just leave the house lights on." I go backstage and I see Sergio Franchi. I said, "Sergio, how'd you get booked to do this?" He says, "Bang, boom, boom." We get out, we did the show, it was a big hit show, and I was the MC and Sergio sang, and now I'm going to my car, and Boom Boom walks into my car. And he says, "Thanks, kid." I said, "My pleasure, Boom." He says, "You were terrific." I says, "Anytime, Boom Boom." He says, "We owe you a favor." I says, "It's okay, Boom Boom." He says, "We don't like to owe favors." what can we do for you? I said, I got nothing in mind. He says, we don't like to do favors. Now I'm in trouble. They want to do me a favor, and I don't want a favor. Never say that to them. So I said to him, what do you got in mind? And he said, got anybody you don't like? The God's honest truth, morality aside, the first thing you think of is names. And in our business, you know it would be the first thing you'd think of, right? Has anybody said to a radio person, got anybody you don't like? Oh, Christ, sit down. We'll make a list. But it is, as we all know, a rewarding business. And I imagine that when you want to get serious, we'll take some questions in a little while, because I know they like to do that, this group. And anything you want to ask about, you want to ask about radio or Ted Turner, what it's like to know, to be in Ted Turner's presence. It's kind of all night with him, work at CNN, then work at Mutual Radio, and write for USA Today. I mean, it really is a great kick to have hit this place in the business. And it's all due to radio. I mean, every other thing that's happened to me has been a spin-off of radio, and radio's always been the closest thing to me, because it has a very special place in my heart. It's where I started. It's what I'm most comfortable with. It's what I like the best. It's the most intimate form of programming. And it's what I always wanted to do when I was a kid. When I was 5 years old, we found our junior high school booklet from age 11, and the wish was to be radio announcer. There's nothing else I ever wanted to do. I grew up with a wonderful childhood in Brooklyn, New York, with an incredible group of people. We had a reunion of our high school the other month, and I was the MC. And it was just great to see all these people grown up, all 50 years old, and all still 17. You know, we never got 17 out of us. It was part of our growth, part of our upkeep. And I'll tell you a couple of stories from those days, and then anything you want to ask. These are rather amusing stories, but they're true. It's called the Gil Mappo story. I wrote about it in my book. In the book, Simon & Schuster was the publisher, and they had to reach everybody I mentioned for a release, and they couldn't really reach Gil Mappo. So they changed his name to Mel Mappo, so they couldn't be sued. Yeah, publishing is a whole different world. There's a weird world. Michael Corder was my editor. He's like a thin little guy, and he writes hit books himself. When we finished the book, we had a meeting to title the book. And all the top people at Simon & Schuster were there. And Michael kept sliding down under his desk. And all these people kept sliding down at their seats in order to see him. And by the end of the meeting, there were 14 grown people on the floor looking under Michael's desk, because he's a little strange. And they're thinking of also a title, Up From Radio. And Michael finally said, I like Larry King by Larry King. And they all go, great, super, that's it, run out. Michael liked it, we all liked it. Anyway, I'll tell a couple of these stories. They run a little while. They really happened. We're putting them on a record, and the Capitol people want to record this and send it out. And we've also had a call from Lorimar about the possibility of doing a television show based on this youth background that we had of guys in Brooklyn, New York, in an era that's gone forever. When we were 21 guys, we all lived in the same neighborhood. We had a club. We never did anything dangerous. We weren't the most responsible of people. We never robbed or stole, but we did offbeat things as a kind of unit. And this is the Gil Mappo story. It's a true story. One day, we were in 9th grade. In the New York City school system, you went to high school in 10th grade, 10th, 11th, and 12th in high school, and you went through junior high school through the 9th grade. So we were graduating junior high school. You know, it's last year junior high school, we're going to go on to high school, 9th grade. And one day we're sitting in class, and a guy named Gil Mermelstein, we called him Gil Mappo because his hair was like a mop, curly hair, didn't come to school. So Herbie Cohen, who today is the author of You Can Negotiate Anything, is probably the most famous negotiator in America, Brazzi Abadi, who is a brain surgeon in Buffalo, New York, and myself go to visit Gil Mappo's house because he didn't come to school. And all the curtains are down in this house, and it's like closed up, and sitting in front of his house is his cousin, looking forlorn. I mean, look at that. So Herbie said, hello, Mappo's cousin, looking forlorn. What? Herbie talks like that. what's the matter? And he says, Gil got tuberculosis. And they went to Arizona. It's going to take about a year. And his father had retired from business, so his father and mother went out there to live with him, and they closed up the house. I live in New Jersey. I'm just hanging around waiting till school tomorrow. So Herbie says, you don't have to wait. We'll tell the school. So the guy leaves. Now the three of us are walking back toward the corner. Herbie, Brassy, and myself, and Herbie says, I got a great idea. We'll tell him Mappo died. There's nobody home. We'll raise money for flowers. We'll get $30. We'll have $10 each. We'll run down to Coney Island. We'll eat hot dogs. This is September. He's out a year. We'll graduate in May. It's all over, forgotten. So we go into school, three of us looking sad. The teacher went over to Gil Mappo's house, and he died. The teacher calls the office. Office calls the house. Temporary disconnect. They write deceased on the card. Took our word. We raised $30. We ate frankfurters and hot dogs forever. Had a ball. Looked forlorn. Month later, principal of school asked to see the three of us. Dr. Irving Cohen was the name, and we're very nervous. And we're walking down. We say, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll admit it. We'll get the $30 back. You know, he's going to be ticked. We walk in, and he's smiling. Sit down, my young friends. Sit down. He says, what's going on? He says, the New York Times is running a campaign to promote junior high schools. High schools get all the attention because of football teams. And they want each junior high school to have a project. And they'll come around and do stories on the project. And we didn't know what we were going to do. And then I heard how you raised money for your late friend. So the project of this school will be the Gil Mermelstein Memorial Assembly. At this assembly, a week before graduation, we will honor the outstanding graduate, and I'd like to have the three of you, Herbie, Brassy, and you, Larry, sit on stage in honor of your late friend. Right then, we should have told him. We should have told him. But we were caught up in ego. Ergo ego, still a major problem in our lives. He loved us, and this was a big thing, so we didn't tell him. Now, that day, the Gil Mermelstein Memorial Assembly, the whole school's in the assembly. The honored graduate is on the right side, Dr. Cohen is on the left side, and sitting in the middle are me and Brassy and Herbie, Gil Mappo's the late Gil Mappo's best friends. And there's a big sign that says Gil Mermelstein Memorial Assembly. That day, Gil Mappo came back to school. As Herbie says, in tubercular history, it's never happened. Mappo came back to school. Now, Mappo arrived a little late. He gets to the school, and nobody's in class. So he opens the door to the office. He says, where is everybody? And the girl lady there says, special assembly. Mappo goes to the special assembly. And he's got two ways to enter the special assembly. He can go in through curtains through the side door, or big brass doors that lead right out onto the street. Mappo chooses the big brass doors. All this happens in a flash. The principal is reading Ode to this great graduate and a tribute to the late Gil Mermelstein. The New York Times reporter and the photographer are in the front row. The whole assembly is there. Me and Brassy and Herbie are on stage. And Mappo opens these two brass doors that make a squeak. As Mappo begins to open the door, the first thing he spots is the banner. It says Gil Mermelstein Memorial Assembly. Mappo is not the smartest guy in the world, but he knows what memorial means. Now, these are New York City kids, and I don't want to say that we're better or worse, but New York City kids are pretty sharp. The kids in the back row turn around, see Mappo, they immediately know the whole story. Larry, Brassy, and Herbie glommed us out of $30. And they begin to laugh. You never ask for the money back in New York, you laugh. The laughter starts to ripple. Mappo's looking, laughter begins, principal reading, honored graduate standing to the right. We spot Mappo. We're sitting on stage. Herbie stands up and yells, Go home, Mappo, you're dead. Mappo runs home. His hair straightening out. By the way, to this day, Mappo's like 52 years old now, lives in Miami. People who were there, well, if you met Mappo today, would say, go home, Mappo, you're dead. They still say to him. Mappo ran home. We're standing on stage. The principal looks up and says, what was that? And one of the kids yells out, hey, Mappo ain't dead. That was Mappo. This whole thing is a farce. Well, there's a pandemonium in the auditorium. The New York Times guy's looking around, the photographer. The principal looks at the three of us. My office! And he storms off the stage, and it's really this pandemonium. The honored graduate never got his trophy. Now, the three of us are walking down the hall to go to his office. Brassey's crying. Brassey always wanted to be a doctor. He said, I'll never be a doctor. I'll never be a doctor. And I was crying too. I said, I'm ruined. We're ruined. And had no father, my poor mother. Herbie, who to this day is the same way. Herbie's going, cool it. No problem. No problem. Trust me. No problem. New York Times guy goes into this. Dr. Cohen, the principal, looks at the three of us, says, I can almost quote him exactly, the three of you are doomed. I only have control of you till you're 18. But I'm going to recommend Rikers Island. Hard labor, chopping rocks. You're suspended from school forever. This is the lowest day in my educational life. I never want to see either of you again. Goodbye forever. Herbie says, don't go so fast. You're making a big mistake. He looks at us, what? He says, you're making a major mistake. He says, why? How could I be making a mistake? Look what you did. He said, wait a minute. You know there's a rule in New York City that any suspension has to have a hearing before the board. Now, at this hearing, we're going to get suspended. We did a terrible thing. But somebody on that board is going to say to you, 3 nincompoops come into class, say a kid is dead. You make one phone call. The operator says temporarily disconnected, and you write deceased on the card. We're suspended. You'll never work again. Herbie said, I got a great idea. We forget the whole thing. We call it an aberration. Maybe the New York Times guy won't print it. The Times guy says, I'm not going to print it. 1, because they'll never believe it. 2, it's not our kind of story. It was the New York Post, it would definitely be printed. But it wasn't the New York Times kind of story. And he says, okay, get out of my sight. And we did graduate. At graduation, this is truth, Herbie has a lot of chutzpah. We graduated by class, not alphabetically. And Gil Mermelstein was right in front of Herbie. And Dr. Cohen was passing out the diplomas. And he said, Gil Mermelstein. And Herbie pushed him aside, said, I'll take it. He's dead. Boy, this is a good group. It's nice to work with a group like this. You want to hear one more story, and then we'll take a question?
Yeah.
This is a story that they mentioned on that record. I have told it on the air. It has become a classic. I'll tell you how much of a classic. We're going up to Yale to broadcast in November. And at that broadcast will be one of the people involved in this story. And the tape of this is in there's a broadcast kind of museum in Yale. And the tape of this is not as part of broadcasting, but as part of culture in America, circa early 1950s. Because the story is true, every word of it is true. It really happened. And it's just one of those things that maybe when it was happening it wasn't funny, but with hindsight, it could probably only happen in America. One of those weird kind of things. It again involves Herbie Cohen. It also involves Sandy Koufax. We grew up together, and Sandy Koufax is today, of course, in the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's one of the greatest pitchers who ever lived. Then Sandy was a guy like we all were. Used to hang around the corner. It's November 1951. Date's important. It's a Monday night. When we we were kids, I don't know what kids do now, because I don't know if they're in neighborhoods now. I guess kids go to shopping centers or McDonald's or I don't know where they hang out. But we had corners, stable corners. And what we would do every day is come home from work or school, eat fast, get out of the house to get down to the corner to do nothing. But the first guy to the corner got the lamppost. He could lean against the lamppost. The second guy could put one hand against the lamppost. Third guy. So we were down there one night on the corner like 6 o'clock. Herbie Cohen, Sandy Koufax, and myself. We were arguing about ice cream. Big argument. I loved Breyers and Herbie loved Borden's. And Sandy loved Carvel. Carvel is a chain of ice cream stores that serves the creamy kind. Sandy happened to mention that he was in New Haven, Connecticut a week prior with his stepfather. And he found a Carvel ice cream store that sold 3 scoops for 15 cents. Herbie said, that's impossible. I said, that's impossible. You can't serve 3 scoops for 15 cents. And we bet Sandy. I bet him like $1. Herbie bet him $2. There's only one way to prove it. Go to New Haven. Herbie had a car. We're 17 years old. We get in Herbie's car. We decide we can't go without taking hoo-ha. In every crowd, there is a hoo-ha. Dumb. Hoo-ha's the kind of guy, you walk in and say, want to go to Afghanistan? Okay. Just the way Hoo-ha was not the world's brightest person. He, by the way, is very successful today in sales. Sorry about that, but Hoo-ha grows about $1 million a year on commission sales. Dumbest guy you ever met in your life. Nothing's changed, right? We all know that. But Hoo-ha, he spoke very funny, spoke like this, very funny way of talking. We do with Hoo-ha? We would take Hoo-ha to foreign language films. And he couldn't read the English subtitles fast enough. We would lie to him about the story. Like halfway through, Hoo-ha would say, why did the good guy die? All the police we had is fake police. It's hard to keep a story going when a guy can't read. Okay, the 3 of us, Sandy, Herbie, and I, go into Hoo-ha's house, and he's just starting to eat dinner. His mother's name is Dora, father Nathan. All we said was, Hoo-ha, want to go to Carvel? Now, there's a Carvel 2 blocks from his house. There's like 300 of them. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'll go with them, I'll have a Carvel. I'll just have a little. It won't affect my appetite. I'll come back and I'll have dinner. His mother says okay, his father says okay, we get in the car. We say nothing to Hoo-ha. We drive right down Bay Parkway, right past the Carvel. We hit the Belt Parkway, Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, West Side Highway. Hoo-ha says nothing. West Side Highway to the Major Deacon Expressway to the Merrick Parkway. It's now about 10:30. We're on the Merrick Parkway. It's snowing. And we're heading to Connecticut. Hoo-ha says, forgive me for interrupting. This fascinating conversation we're having about football. My watch says it was about 4 hours ago you came to my house, remember? He said, want to go to Carvel? I said, yeah. And I told my mother and father I'll be right back. And now I see we're going to Connecticut. So, without being too rude, may I inquire why we're going to Connecticut? Herbie says, Hoo-ha. Sandy says that there's a Carvel in New Haven that serves 3 scoops for 15 cents. Hoo-ha forgets his mother, forgets his father, puts his hands to small bet. They can't do that, so Hoo-ha bets him. Now we get to New Haven. It's about 11:15, it's really snowing, early snow. And there's the Carvel station. And the guy's closing up. It's snowing. We pull in. Sandy says, that's it, this is the place, 3 scoops, 15 cents. Herbie says, wait a minute, Sandy may know this guy, the whole thing could be set up. We're thinking that already, like we're set up. He says, Larry, just get out and order 15 cents worth and see how many scoops you get. So I go out and I said, 15 cents, chocolate please. Sure enough, 3 scoops. We lose the bet. We get out of the car, and Hoo-ha decides that if we have enough Carvels, we're going to make money. Because if we eat 100 of them, we're making a nickel every shot. We make what it was. So we're eating this guy out of Carvel. I mean, we're really eating Carvels, 3 scoops for 15 cents. So the guy looks at us, the snow's coming down. He says, I'm having my best day since July 4th. And it's snowing. What brings you guys here? So he's telling the whole story, how we're from Brooklyn, and the guy can't believe it. How he serves 3 scoops of 15 cents. Nobody does that. He says, no wonder I'm losing money. It's like a whole station full of trade deals. Same kind of thing. So now, it's almost midnight. We finished, we're full of car bells. We're a little depressed. Sandy won the bet. And we're going to drive back home. Sandy says, I want to show you New Haven first. It's a nice town. So we figure with 4 17-year-old guys from Brooklyn, who are like 100, 200 miles away, we've never seen New Haven, Sandy's going to show us. He says, there's a quick way over to Main Street. Cut down this alley. It was an alley like, And we drive down the alley heading toward Main Street. It's midnight. And suddenly, cars pull in front of us and cars pull behind us. And people come out of buildings, and they're putting stickers on all the cars. And a guy is climbing on our car with a sign, putting a sign on Herbie's car. Who else says? You think we ought to ask what this is? So we look out the window and it says, vote for Mayor Lee. What it was election eve. And after midnight in Connecticut, you can't electioneer on election day. So all of Mayor Lee's campaign workers gathered together, put all their signs on their cars, and had a little parade to the high school for a reception for Mayor Lee. By the way, Mayor Lee's still alive, remembers this story. We left the sign on the car, by the way. Herbie left the sign on the car for 3 weeks. And 2 weeks later in the New York mayoralty election, Lee had 56 write-in votes. We drive in this, we don't know what's going on. We drive to this high school with all the other cars. We're in the middle. We get out, it's snowing. We go inside the high school. It's about 250, 300 people. And they're serving donuts and coffee, tribute to Mayor Lee. Who else says, oh, this is heaven. I lost the bet for donuts and coffee. We're eating donuts and coffee. Sandy and I stand around mingling. We don't know anybody there. Sandy comes over to me and says, Larry, you know what Herbie's doing? I says, what? He's going around telling everyone what a terrific campaign worker you were. So I go around and start talking about Herbie. I said, see that guy there in the knickers and a Mackinac jacket? Killed himself for this campaign. We don't even know what Mayor Lee looks like. Bernie's eating the donuts, Sandy's sipping coffee, and we're going around telling each other about ourselves. Now they set up mayor's going to make a little speech. They set up a bunch of bridge chairs in the high school gymnasium, a little stage, and they put out 4 chairs. And the campaign manager comes over to us and said, we'd like you, Herbie, and you, Larry, to sit on the stage with us as an example of youth in politics. Now, this is the first time we saw Mayor Lee because we didn't know what he looked like. We sit up on this stage. Hoo-Ha sees this. He's in back with the donuts. And Hoo-Ha's oblivious. He's just waving to us. Sandy gets a laugh attack. Koufax still remembers this. He gets a laugh attack. So he stuffed donuts in his mouth and he siphoned air in through the straw. And he had an accident. The dry cleaner could never do anything about it. He was just cracking up. Now there's 300 people sitting. 3 or 4 of us are on stage. Hoo-Ha's in the back. Sandy's on the floor. And we're sitting. And Herbie leans over to the campaign manager and says, why don't you let Larry introduce the mayor? Herbie has not changed. So this campaign manager gets up and says, we thought we'd salute a symbol of youth. We have 2 young men here, and we're going to have little Larry here introduce the mayor. I stand up. I guess it was my first time before a microphone. Had to be. And I go, ladies, gentlemen, I've been asked to introduce Mayor Lee, but I think my friend Herbie Cohen should do it. I point to Herbie. Truth. That's why Herbie makes a ton of money. Herbie gets up and does 25 minutes. He had hoo-ha crying. He talked about the history of America, the great state of Connecticut, and the founding fathers. And he ended it with, I give you not just the next mayor of New Haven, the next senator, next governor, next president, Mayor Lee. The crowd went crazy. And Mayor Lee couldn't top it. It would be like Carter following Cuomo. It was a joke. So Mayor Lee spoke, and now it's like 2 in the morning, and we're all leaving. The lights are out in the gymnasium, and only the light of the moon, a little snow falling, comes into the gymnasium. Never forget this, Lloyd. And Mayor Lee says to the four of us, we're walking out, "Can I see you guys a minute?" And we stay back. And he says to his campaign manager, "You can leave." They all leave. There's nobody left but the four of us and the mayor. And the mayor looks at Herbie and I, and he says, "Guys, what I'm going to say now is probably going to break your heart." And I thought about not saying it. And who else says, "Go ahead, man, just say it." He says, I couldn't live with myself if I didn't say it. So I'm going to say it. I may ruin you forever in politics. I heard about how hard both of you worked. Tonight the campaign manager told me about stuffing leaflets and delivering. He says, there's no other way to tell you but to tell you. He says, I've lived in New Haven all my life. I have 2 campaign headquarters, and I visited them both every day. And I had never seen either of you my entire life. And who else said, "We don't know who the hell you are." We don't even know why we're here. We got stuck in a parade. So the mayor's flabbergasted. He looks and he says, "Are you guys from New Haven?" "Nope." "Where are you from?" I said, "Brooklyn." "Brooklyn, you up here visiting?" "Nope." "Know anybody in New Haven?" "Nope." "Going to look at Yale?" So he says, "What brought you here?" Herbie says, "Mayor Lee, Sandy said that there was a Carvel in New Haven that served 3 scoops for 15 cents. And Mayor Lee said, that's impossible, they can't serve it." True story. In fact, Mayor Lee eventually wound up chairman of the board of New Haven Bank and Trust, and I flew up and told his story at a dinner honoring him. And you remember every bit of it. End of story. We leave New Haven and drive back to Brooklyn. Bernie has never called home. Bernie is hoo-ha. We get down, and we're down, and we arrive in Brooklyn. It's 5 in the morning, and the snow has now reached Brooklyn. And we're driving down Bernie Street to let him off. We pull up in front of his house, and standing in front of his house are his mother and father. It is a form of Jewish masochism, maybe parental masochism. They could stay inside the house and look out the window, but that would mean no suffering. So they're standing in the snow. We pull up in front of the house, we get out. The 4 of us start to walk toward Bernie's mother and father. Bernie's mother said to him, I guess, what every mother has said to a teenage son. She said, "Bernie, tonight from me you took 10 years. 10 years of my life, Bernie." Nathan, the father, says, "Let's see if there's an explanation." Says, "Bernie, where the hell did you go?" Bernie, who is hoo-ha, says, "Carver." Mother says, "Don't lie, Bernie, never lie." He says, "We went to Carver, we just didn't go to the one near here." She says, "I know that because when it was 2 hours, it was 8 o'clock, we walked over there. And you never went there. Where the hell did you go?" He says, "We went to the Carvel in New Haven, Connecticut." She goes, "That's another 10 years. Bernie's father gets Herbie and Sandy and I. Now the neighbors are looking out the window. It's like 5:15 in the morning. He takes the hand out of the pocket, got the gloves on with the one finger missing. And he hits me in the chest, and Bernie and Herbie in the chest, and Sandy in the chest. And he goes, "Bum, bum, bum. You're bum, you're bum, you're bum." He's screaming, "Bum, bum, 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 bum." Finally grabs hold of Herbie, pulls him right up next to him. Bernie's father, and says, "What the hell did you go to the Haven for?" Herbie said, Sandy said, "There was a Carvel in New Haven that served 3 scoops for 15 cents. God's honor." Bernie's father said, "That's impossible, they can't serve." Okay, that's been 45 minutes, and I know you got a session at 11, it's 10:30, so any questions, just fire away and we'll respond.
How much are 3 scoops now?
I'll bet it's $2. That's impossible. That's the guy definitely from Duluth. Anybody, any questions at all?
I was Art Butler from Radio Guides, and I do a lot of video air checks and what have you. I was showing some last night of Greaseman, Scott Shannon, and some of those people. And a lot of people in this room probably heard the show that you did with those two guys. I don't know Greaseman. I've just seen him, on the features and what have you. But I know Scott fairly well. And I was just curious, what did you think of that show? How would you rate that? Did you enjoy it? Things like
Well, the Greaseman has done promos for us.
Has he?
Which he says, Larry King is dating my wife Estelle. Great respect for his talent, but no respect for his opinion of women. I'll tell you what, I was always a maverick when I started. I was a maverick broadcaster. I was always a taker. So I think, while it's not, and who's the other guy in New York that used to be in Washington? Howard Stern. I had him on in New York. And I appreciate what they're doing. My daughter loves that kind of stuff. She's 17. It is not my kind of humor, although, and this is not a cop-out, it's an although, I respect risk takers. And I'm sure if I were in my 20s today, I'd be doing that kind of radio. I'd be knocking the society and knocking the people around me and kidding the groups. To me, like certain words they use, I guess I'm 51 years old, and I've been ingrained in this too long. I couldn't use the word, say, fag on the air, the way they use it, or nigger. I couldn't say that on the word for humor. A lot of it, I think, is cheap humor. I've talked to Howard Stern about that. I think that it's getting laughs at the expense of others, and I love humor. And I like kidding groups, so it's not that I'm taking a stand that you can't do black humor, you can't do Polish humor, that kind of thing, but there's a borderline, and for my taste, they cross the borderline often. Not Shannon so much, who sort of subverts the ship, but the Greaseman, Howard Stern, they cross it. So, with the proviso that it's not my taste, I like gutsy people on the air. I like people who take risks. When I broke into radio, there was a sign on the wall that said, "If in doubt, leave it out." I always broke that rule. I still do. I don't think about what I'm going to say. I say it. But ingrained in me is a different kind of humor. Now, I'm here with it. I mean, there are people today. I mean, Mel Brooks dropped this thing on the floor, and George Carlin. But I was close friends with Lenny Bruce for years. Spent a lot of time with Lenny. Have about 20 hours of tapes with Lenny. And remember, this is circa 1960. And Lenny was bizarre to us. I mean, Lenny was just in another world. And Lenny was tame compared to some. Now, Lenny was funnier than these guys. I mean, Lenny was a genius. But tame compared to what they're doing now. So it's a different era. I respect the era, but it's not my taste. I don't like the taste.
Which one or two programs that you've done over the past, let's say, 3 years have received the most response? Most letters,
Well, beyond the typical controversial show you do, which you always bring responsive, you do a debate on abortion and Danny Kaye, Frank Sinatra, and the oddly enough, a show we did with a heart surgeon who said you can reverse heart disease, that you can, in fact, have heart disease and get better, which was unheard of, and was a heart surgeon. And so that was a storm of letters, and still getting letters on the way they could reach this guy and that kind of thing. That'll always produce. It's hard to pick out a best because I like everything I do. But Danny Kaye was outstanding. Sinatra, of course, because he's so hard to get. And because he's a very good interview once you get him. We got a lot of reaction from that. Anybody else?
over here. First question that comes to my mind about you is, when do you sleep? But
That's a fair question.
the second question is, I know there are a number of us here in the room who have people who do overnight shows who may consider themselves night people, and I'm wondering how you handle your regimen. You're on CNN, you write a column, you're on the air all night, and comes back to the question, when do you sleep? How do you handle this? And
Well, sometimes I think I'm a clone of myself, and sometimes I'm awfully tired. Here's the regimen I try to live. I do the CNN show, and that's only 3 weeks old, so. But I do that from 9 to 10, and then I sort of hang around there. I go over to the network, and relax. Sometimes we'll nap a half hour, so like 11 to 11:30, and then go on the air at midnight, leave at 4, home very quickly. I live near the network, and I'm asleep by 4:30. Get up around 9:30. It's 5 hours sleep. Read the papers, have some coffee, go through the mail, and usually have lunch with someone, either in the industry or in Washington politics, because I like that. I like to, so I've got a lot of friends in Washington that I really like being around. Have lunch, come back home, and usually read, usually a book. I've read the papers in the morning, usually read a book, and then hopefully nap. And if I nap from like 4 to 6, I'm fine. And that gives me a total of like 6, 7 hours sleep. However, there are days you can't nap. There are days you think the phone shut off and someone gets through. And so I think when you work overnight, you never know what the next day is going to bring. You try to regiment it. And the trouble is the weekend. See, the weekends you're back in the norm again because you don't work Saturday and Sunday. So what I don't do on Saturday is take that afternoon nap. I still get up at 9:30 in the morning Saturday morning, but I won't take the afternoon nap because if I take the afternoon nap, I'm not going to be tired when the rest of the world is tired. The CNN show, I really gave it a lot of thought. One, I told myself I knew if I take this show Monday through Friday, the things I like to do, I'm going to cut back. I like going to baseball games in Baltimore. I like going to theater. I like movies. I like long dinners. That has nothing to do with being tired, because driving to Baltimore to see a baseball game and driving back is much more tiring than going to do a 1-hour television show. Much more. But I was giving up a lot. But they offered, we're in a room, we're all in this business. Ted Turner offered so much money. And at the same time, Mutual contract was up, and I was hearing from ABC and CBS and NBC and Westwood One and United Stations that what my agent, it's great to have an agent, Bob Wolf is my agent out of Boston, and he represents like Doug Flutie and Larry Bird, and he represents a lot of major figures in sports, and he has Gene Shalit and Judy Woodruff in broadcasting, and he says we're really sitting on a hot thing here, and we got a chance to make an awful lot of money. And so what do you want to do? So I said, well, okay, and CNN was non-cancelable 3 years, and Mutual was non-cancelable 5 years. That means if I got sick, they got to pay you. There's no clause out. I'm 51. I'll give the next 3 years of my life to doing both of these. Then I'll owe Mutual 2 more. And then I'll make a decision. I'll try to save some money and do some things. The problem in explaining it is that I like everything I do. In other words, it is no chore to go to CNN to interview Tip O'Neill and take calls. And it's no chore to go to Mutual and interview a guy who's just written a very important book and take calls. That's no comparison to the work that somebody who's working in construction has for 8 hours. I think a mailman works harder, 8 hours straight. I don't work 8 hours straight. I got no boss sitting over my head. Nobody tells me what to ask. I've never been called in to say you shouldn't do this on the air. So I have control of my environment. I don't have anything to do with picking a guest. I let the producers do that. I work off the top of my head. I don't do a lot of research. So I get to the television station at 8:30. They do the makeup. I get on. It's a wonderful experience because they finally got a television thing that really fits me. It's almost set up like radio. And so I'm taking that. The USA Today column and the sporting news columns are easy to do. I just keep the paper in, and I get so many things flooded into me during the week. So I like work because it's not work. And that's something that talent should never admit that. But this business is not work. I mean, it really is a gravy train. And I never met anyone in it that didn't love it. I never met a person in this business. You could be a morning disc jockey in Biloxi, Mississippi, or John Gambling in New York, and the guy in Biloxi might be making $200 a week, and Gambling's making $1.5 million. They both love what they're doing. And the guy in Biloxi knows that if he's really good, he's got the same shot as Gambling had. And there ain't no business like that. That's why I love it. So, it is tiring, and there are nights you're tired. Like today, I got to fly back and do a television show tonight, and I taped the television show for last night. But under the new Mutual contract, I get off 10 Fridays a year, or 10 or 12 Fridays a year. So I took tonight as a night off under the contract, because I'd be dead tonight if I had to do tonight's radio show. I'll be tired of the television show because of getting up early this morning. I did KSTP AM this morning. I did this. I take a plane back, I go to Washington, have a quick bite, go over to the television station. Now, I thrive on it. I'm not a good relaxer. I don't like going to the islands. I couldn't take a cruise, although I liked Hawaii. And I like the dividends that come from the show. I like going to nice restaurants, and I like meeting interesting people, and I love living in Washington. So I like all those things. But there were days, like last week the Yankees came into town, that I really felt bad. I mean, I wanted to be at that ballpark.
You raised a very interesting point in mentioning your age. You're 51, and you grew up in a generation where conversation was the medium because television hadn't taken over. We didn't have video games, doo-dah. Now, I'm not 51, but I hear this story from my parents all the time. Where are the next generation of Larry Kings going to come from? Because there's two different problems here. You've got one problem where most of the people in this room, even the ones who are in the upper end of the demographic, still grew up in a generation where the art of talk and the art of conversation was not looked on as favorably as movies or,
That's a very good question. I grew up greatly affected by Arthur Godfrey, a rule breaker, major rule breaker, and Red Barber doing baseball. That had a great effect on me. What I think will happen today, oddly enough, I think while the art of conversation may be lost or lesser, the reverse will happen. I think right now there's probably a lack of good talent. I would say the demand exceeds the supply. But I think from the Howard Sterns and those guys, the greasemen, will come another breed of youngster, a risk taker, who doesn't want to play music, who likes the business and doesn't want to do that. Now, there's a kid named Ed Till. He's in Palm Beach, Florida. He's 26 years old, but doesn't want to play records. Wants to talk more, wants to interview people, wants to take risks. Maybe the kind of talk will change, but I think we'll still produce it. Hopefully we'll still produce it. Why, I agree. I grew up affected by the Edward R. Murrows, and I don't think there's any newsman in Murrow's league. Television was greatly affected more by it. Television was a better medium when I was a kid than it is now. Creatively, not technically. Technically now it's incredible. But creatively, they took more risks. And risk-taking is really what it's all about. I mean, the only thing, Johnny Carson told me is really true, the only thing that separates talent from ordinary talent, real talent from ordinary talent, is risk-taking. The real talent knows, and I don't think this matters what the current age may be, the real talent knows that the program revolves around him or her. That if he doesn't like it, the audience won't like it. That if he doesn't take a risk, he's never going to be talked about. He's never going to make it. And 95% of the people in the business, while they love it, and they have nice voices, and they have some talent, won't do what Greaseman does. They won't do it. They're afraid. Once you're afraid, you can't do it. But the youngsters who have the talent will out. If you have talent, now you get in trouble when you have talent. You get called into the general manager, and he says, "What did you do this morning? I couldn't believe that." But that's the way you get mentioned. That's the way you rise up, and it'll happen, I think, in talk too. And I got a chance in my career to meet these people, to meet the Godfreys and the Red Barbers and the like, and talk to them. And I did shows with Arthur Godfrey on CBS Radio in the mid-'60s when he came down to Miami. And I love that aspect of him. I love the taking a chance. When it's hard to explain to people. When I'm going to interview someone, like tonight, I don't know who's on the television show tonight. We had on someone booked from the NBC television show, The Cop Show, Hill Street. But they may have canceled him because of this hostage thing. So I could be driving there tonight, not know who the guest is. I don't mind that. Because I could interview anyone. Because I'm genuinely curious. And I like that spontaneity. I mean, if I had guests say to me, what's going to be your first question? I don't know. I mean, I could come on the moment I come on and think it would go a different route than I was intending to go a minute before. And that's what risk takers do. In other words, Carson goes out there every night, does that monologue, does that thing. That's a risk-taking thing. Godfrey, and I was raised in that kind of era. Hopefully the kids today, while they may be more affected by disc jockeys, they're going to veer off into talk. I remember I did a show with Godfrey, an example of risk-taking. Godfrey had his radio show, and we just broke his record in the Guinness Book of Records for hours on network radio, because he had compiled a lot of them over the years. And he came down to Florida to do a week of shows, and he had me co-host. I was like a popular Miami personality, and I sat there with him and interviewed his guests, and it was a great thrill for me to be around a guy I grew up with as a legend. Sometimes legends disappoint you, and he didn't. And he had a commercial to do, And they handed him, the producer came in, handed him the commercial. He looked at it, and he just threw it up and he threw it away. And he said, I hope that my next sponsor goes out of business. In fact, I pray that they go bankrupt. I hope that as of this minute, they never sell one other product that they have now across the United States. I hope they're all recalled, and I hope they're burned. Now, what did he have? He had the whole audience's total attention. He had an immediate thought. He went to it. I was raptured. If you were listening at home, you had to be raptured. And then he said, because that will mean we have cured the common cold. Till then, all we have is contact. It was 20 years ago. 20 years ago. He mentioned the product once. All we have is contact. I never forgot that. I never forgot that. But if he had the whole audience the same way as he had me, we all heard that last word. And what did we do? People who heard that went over to other people. He got free yesterday. You know, people went into stores. That was a risk take. Martin Block one morning on radio. Now, Grease Man might do this today, but we were kind of, Martin Block had Jiffy peanut butter. I was homesick from school. And as anyone on radio knows, we can eat a lot of things on the air. You can hide a jelly bean in here, a potato chip can go behind your tooth. We get away with eating. If you're just, you know you can get away with it. I can't eat peanut butter. Martin Block said, my sponsor is Jiffy Peanut Butter, and one of the rules in radio is, naturally you can't eat peanut butter. But I love Jiffy Peanut Butter, and I have a bottle here, and I'm going to eat it. And he took a scoop out and he put it in his mouth and he started saying, oh. I got dressed and went out and bought Jiffy Peanut Butter. That was a risk take. And I admired and grew up around people like that. And they got to be still there. They got to be out there. Because there's more jocks doing things like Grease Man, which was risky jocks were less than we were kids. So I would hope the same breed would come out.
What was your most embarrassing moment on radio doing talk?
Well, everyone has embarrassing moments. My most embarrassing moment, but there were two. One made the part in my blooper movie, was Plager Brothers bread. Plager Brothers was a popular bread in Miami, and I did the commercials live, and their theme was the best in bread. And I said, see, now today this might mean nothing on a Grease Man show, but I was reading the commercial, and I said, don't forget Plager Brothers for the breast in bed. And I laughed, the engineer laughed, and then repeated it and made the same thing again. I said, it's Plager Brothers for the breast in bed. Then when I did Dolphin football, I was color on Dolphin football for 7 years, I had the Baltimore Colts Drug and Bugle Corps. And I had the referee came out and did the coin toss. And I couldn't say coin toss. And all year long I would say coin toss. And the play-by-play announcer would say, let's throw it to Larry for what he can't say. And I would say coin toss. Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story. Well, one other question here, and I'll tell you a quick story because it's like 10 to 11.
I have two questions. One is about what you're talking about right there with live ads. We're not doing that very much in radio anymore, and I think we're missing a lot of what you're talking about.
I agree. All of them are taped. All of my network commercials are taped. I agree. Miss that.
The second thing is you talked in an article a while back about not preparing for interviews by reading a book. Do you recommend that to people here?
Only if you have faith in your own curiosity. To me, it's very logical that if I'm going to interview someone, and remember I've got an hour now, I wouldn't recommend it in an 8-minute interview. And you've written a book. I don't want to be ahead of the audience. I want to be as curious as the audience is. I don't want to ask a question I know the answer to. And all those things are taken away from me if I read the book. So I don't read the book. So if you've got, tonight you're on my show, and you've written a book called Problem in Africa. And you're a reporter, a veteran reporter, and you've been in Africa for the past year, and I look at the book jacket, and you've come back to discuss the problems of Africa. That's all I want to know. Zippo. I don't want anything else about you. When I interview, I'll find out a lot about you, where you went to school, how you come to go to Africa, all of which you may have told me in the book. How you like now? Will I miss some things? Yeah. Will the person who's read the book hit some things that I won't hit? Yes. But for my own, again, it comes back to self. The times I feel the worst are when I interview good friends, people I know a great deal about, or those occasions when I've read the book. If I have read the book by the author, I feel inadequate to do the interview well. It may sound strange, but I'm certainly more curious. And if I've read the book, I'm less curious. So for me, the more curiosity, the better. I would rather really, honest to God, not know who's on the show tonight at all. I'd rather go in, sit down, have someone come in and say, the guest tonight is Earl Weaver. And then they go right on with them. That would be just as fine to me than knowing. But it's me, and you have to be you. So would I recommend it? No, unless that appeals to you. Unless you feel you have the curiosity. Now, when you do that, you got to have the ability to listen, because every answer can have a follow-up question. You have to listen. You're not prepared, so I don't have a list of questions. So I'm depending on my own curiosity, the ability, which is inborn, I don't take any credit for it, to have the brain go to the mouth instantly. Because if the guy answers the question in full, I've got to go another area, and I've got to be able to listen to him, because I'm not concentrating on the next question, and at the same time, the brain focus to the mouth, and be curious. And there's a lot of people in the business who just don't know how to interview. They're great newsmen who don't know how to interview. I remember Brokaw once. It's an example of a Today Show kind of interview when you had 6 minutes, and Goldwater was the guest, and he had he had a little card, and he had his 4 subjects written out. And obviously subject number 3 was Nixon. And he asked Goldwater about Nixon. And Goldwater said, you know something I'll never forget? 3 weeks before Nixon resigned, a couple of friends and myself met him at the White House. And he was talking. And he said something. He said, I'll never forget it. And when we left, I said to my 2 friends, did you hear what he said? And they said, yeah. And I said to them, he's going to resign. He'll never be president. That was his answer. And Brokaw said, what about going to China? Okay, what he had was a note that said China. He had a clock that said, I got 2 minutes left. He never heard the answer to that question. He just didn't hear the answer. Bob and Ray used to do a great takeoff on the poor interviewer. Bob and Ray, I was raised with Bob and Ray. They had who's their guy, their characters always out, Wally Ballou. And they did a show called Wally Ballou Man the Street. And they billed it as Wally Ballou, the world's best interviewer. Wally Ballou can talk to anyone on the street, and through incisive questioning, learn a great deal. Let's go out on the street to Wally Ballou. And they'd always come in, and engineers used to love that. He'd always say, Ollie Ballou here. No, he'd always Mr. Watt. Ollie Ballou here, you're a man on the street interviewer. I talk to the known and the unknown, and through the ability of my great questions, learn a great... Here comes the gentleman, sir. Step right up. Yes, sir. What's your name? He says, Harvey Johnson. He says, where do you live? He says, Bell Point, Long Island. What do you do for a living, Harvey? He's on the KGB spy. He said, are you married? What brings you to New York today? He said, I'm going to blow up the UN. Have you seen My Fair Lady? That was wonderful stuff. There's a collection out of Bob and Ray in the museum in New York. If you get to New York City, go to that museum. I was very honored because they just ordered a collection of my interviews, and I just signed a contract to do a new book. This is going to be a collection of interviews over the years, and there's a bunch of Bob and Ray in there, and there's all the classics. Like, we have with us today Harvey Byrne, the president of the STOA. What, Harvey, is the STOA? The STOA is the slow talkers of America. And then what happened as he started to interview this guy, and every answer was slow, the interviewer would try to put in the words to speed it along, and the guy would just repeat the words, like, what is your favorite city? the interviewer's favorite. Those are wonderful things. I mean, that was just, and you may have a point, young lady, that they're not doing that now. They went to a fire engine factory once and interviewed the general manager at a factory that makes fire engines. He said, how many you make a year? One. They're in a great demand. They don't build up a lot of mileage. As they're talking, the factory burned down. They did not know how to put out the fire. And the guy was saying, we only make them, we don't know how to put them out. I've been up here like an hour and 10 minutes. I'll leave you with a quick story. We can use it in life when all of us bumble and fumble. And it was told to me by Paul Hornung. The Green Bay Packers had played a game once against the then Chicago Cardinals and had lost. And Vince Lombardi was ticked, and he was very angry, really angry, at how poorly they had played. So he asked the entire team to assemble Monday morning in pads, which is unheard of in the National Football League. That means full dress practice. And they all assembled. And Lombardi, who was a very short guy, stood up on a milk box. And he said, gentlemen, I have in front of me idiots. You are all idiots. You are children. Yesterday's performance was a disgrace. I'm going to have to begin all over. Start all over. All the work don't mean the thing. I'm going to begin from the beginning. He picked up a football. He said, this is a football. And Max McGee said, don't go so fast.